I've listened to nothing but Steely Dan for 30 days and it drove me a little crazy. So here's what I have learned. A few weeks back, I unboxed this Sire guitar. This is a Larry Carlton guitar, famously known for playing with Steely Dan. Sweetwater sponsored this video and the last one. And the idea was I was going to take music that I had a neutral to negative opinion on. This would be the music of Steely Dan. No offense to anybody who loves Steely Dan, but this was like my parents' music that I automatically was averse to. Music that's really, the heyday of it came out before I was born. So forgive me if I didn't have all the facts correct going into it. But this is a very culturally significant band. The reason I seem a little adversarial right now is because some of the comments on that video were very upsetting. This is what I learned listening to nothing but Steely Dan for 30 days. We're gonna go through every album. I'm just gonna kind of quick go over what I heard of because I was very mistaken on the breadth and scope of what this band, specifically Fagen and Becker, were able to accomplish. A lot of drama, a lot of intrigue, a lot of laughter, a lot of tears were into this journey. So we're gonna go through the albums. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the music theory that made this band special. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the legacy of the band and the hated yacht rock term. And then we're gonna kind of finish off with the conclusion and a performance of what is probably my favorite, actually what has now become my second favorite Steely Dan song. So join me for this ride. Debut album, Can't Buy a Thrill. I cannot believe that this is a band's debut album. So when I say I've never heard Steely Dan, obviously that's a lie. It's like I've heard it. Just you can't exist in the world without hearing some of these songs. In fact, Dirty Work was the one song that I was pretty familiar with. This used to be on our set list back when I was like gigging a lot, doing like covers and stuff. I love the song Dirty Work. It has now become clear to me that this is maybe the least Steely Dan of all Steely Dan songs, even though we are going to talk a little bit about music theory behind that later on in this video. But the way that this album started off is actually insane. So it starts off with Do It Again, all-time classic. Goes right into Dirty Work, all-time classic. At this point, I was like, all right, these are songs familiar to me. I'm enjoying the vibe. I'm having a good time. And then it hits me with Kings. And it was when Kings came on, a song I had never heard before to my cognizant knowledge. I guess maybe some people would consider Kings maybe a bit of a deep cut in the Steely Dan catalog or something like that. I got chills listening to Kings. Such a good song, incredible craftsmanship, and then this album just kind of keeps going on, and I just can't believe that this is a debut album. Can't Buy a Thrill is obviously iconic. What's interesting is this and kind of like a combination with the next one, Countdown to Ecstasy. Countdown to Ecstasy, top 10 worst album name I've ever heard though. There's something about naming your album Countdown to Ecstasy. And this is my thing with Steely Dan also too. It's like, I can't tell when they're kind of being funny and ironic and when they're being serious, which may lend itself into a little bit of the yacht rock conversation we're gonna have in a few minutes. The thing about these two albums is like, this is when they were more of a band. It wasn't just kind of a duo being Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, just running through the best musicians in the world. This is a little bit more of like a band that would tour and go perform. In fact, there is an incredible YouTube video of them doing all this stuff live on a show called The Midnight Special that is must watch. Like watching that really kind of gave me a vibe. And it really made me understand a little bit more about the band in general. And shortly after that, it seemed like they kind of stopped touring and they became just a studio band, which as someone who played a lot of live shows, I totally understand and agree with. And it's almost kind of a shame that we don't really have a lot of opportunities for musicians to actually do that and go into the studio and just spend time there. But anyways, back to the music. I'm just kind of a contrarian hater. Like, I'm sorry. Like, but you know, I'm more like into indie alternative stuff. Pop music, I just have an aversion to in general. The musicianship on these albums is just like, it just stands out in such a way that is really hard to be denied. But I want to get to the second album. This has my new favorite song from Steely Dan on there. My Old School is such a banger. Like, just a fantastic song. And then especially the live version, Skunk Baxter. It's pretty funny. I went into this being like, oh, well, Larry Carlton's the man. You know, I got this cool Sire guitar. Let's kind of listen to like the Kid Charlemagne stuff, blah, blah, blah. Skunk Baxter blows me away. Like, incredible guitar player, specifically live. Even the stuff that he does on Reelin' in the Years. And even like the Reelin' in the Years intro, which, you know, you probably love. Like, that's like such a great intro. And what's funny to me about that is people talk about the greatest guitar solos all time. How is that not a guitar solo? Just because it happens at the beginning, I think people classify the intro of Reeling in the Years as an intro and not a guitar solo. That's a guitar solo, and the intro to Reeling in the Years is the best guitar solo in the entire Steely Dan catalog. Apologies to Ricky Don't Lose That Number, Kid Charlemagne, and everything else. I love the tone on it. I know it was Elliot Randall that actually did it, but again, in the live version, Skunk Baxter's slaying it. It was a very educational journey for me to just kind of see all the different guitar players and how they kind of went through a lot of them through these albums. And even though they're obviously much different guitar players, they all kind of occupy the same space just because of the arrangement brilliance of Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. My Old School is my favorite song in their entire catalog. That and Boston Rag is also just probably like another deep cut banger that I've never ever heard before in my life, and it's just so good. The other interesting thing about like all these albums is like they came out every year kind of on the dot, right? So that was 1972, I believe, or 1973. And then we go into Pretzel Logic. So it starts off with Ricky Don't Lose My Number. Ricky Don't Lose That Number, my number, whatever. This is probably the song that I do have the most, I feel like such a hater saying this, but like, there's something about that song that just reminds me of like my childhood, and it's like, I hate this song. I was a little kid just being a hater. I'm like, I can't see, can we not listen to this song ever again, please? So my actual favorite on Pretzel Logic is probably Any Major Dude or Charlie Freak. I think maybe of any of the albums on here, this one seems like it covers the most like there's like some kind of acoustic country almost stuff in there. There's like some really progressive stuff in there. There's like some smooth jazzy stuff in there. This one has a lot. It maybe seems the most, I don't know, I feel like disjointed is like an insult, but this one is kind of all over the place. But yeah, I definitely like those two songs specifically. That gets followed up right away with Katie Lied. I guess there was a lot of controversy over the actual sound of this album and how some new, some DBX noise kind of hardware actually made this one sound kind of messed up. I don't know, it sounded great to me still. I think that probably of the early stuff, this was the album I least vibed with initially. I think Your Gold Teeth 2 is probably my favorite track off of this one, just because I'm a huge sucker for waltz stuff. Anything in 3/4 time signature, I'm all about. Probably my favorite one. Also, Michael McDonald is starting to get in the fold, which is a huge thumbs up. Continuing on to The Royal Scam. So The Royal Scam was the one that I had in my mind was going to be my favorite, because like when you look at like the reviews and stuff, like, oh, this is the most guitar focused one, this is where Larry Carlton really kind of comes in and like just like crushes it. I don't know, I feel like it starts out super strong. Kid Charlemagne is the opener. I think that's probably my favorite song off of it, but I've got a hot take coming up in a second. Right after that, it has Caves of, what do you say that? Altamira? Caves of Altamira. Those two songs back to back, amazing, incredible songwriting. What's funny is like people are like, oh, it's just like jazz, progressive music, and it is. Thinking of this in the context of the time it came out, again, my favorite band is Radiohead. I feel like Steely Dan has more in common with Radiohead than like progressive jazz in a way, in a songwriting way, and it's kind of funny that they kind of cross paths with Radiohead, which we'll talk about later. The Royal Scam is a cool guitar album. Larry Carlton, I would argue, is probably the best guitar player with Steely Dan, but I feel like I personally resonate more with the Skunk Baxter playing. I know everybody kind of says Kid Charlemagne is the best guitar solo, like of all time maybe. I don't personally hear it. It's not my kind of playing. Obviously it's incredible, but I didn't really connect with the guitar in a way that I had anticipated that I would. That being said, all of this is leading up to what people consider the masterpiece, Asia. If you watched my video last week, I actually went and I got a hi-fi record player system just to listen to Asia on vinyl, and it doesn't disappoint. It's hard to argue that this isn't their best album. I definitely think it's their most cohesive album. A lot of things that I learned is like, if you just listen to the hits of Steely Dan, it definitely has a the whole yacht rock vibe, where it's just kind of like smooth, easy listening songs with great hooks, but you miss out on all the deep cuts. And what's interesting about pretty much all the albums up until Asia is the deeper cuts kind of are so out of left field. It'll be a totally different genre. It'll be like reggae. It'll be like country. It'll be like something, you know, more piano ballad driven. Asia is the first one to me that seems like a very cohesive album from how I think of albums. I mean, it's just a masterpiece. I watched the documentary on YouTube. That's another great watch. They talk about the making of Asia and just the meticulous nature that went into every single part of it. Just the fact that you have Michael McDonald on background vocals doing like 100 takes of being Michael McDonald in the background of Peg and stuff is fantastic. What's interesting to me, another thing that I didn't know until now was this stuff is out of tune if you try to jam along to it. I say out of tune, obviously it sounds great, but a lot of the older albums, they aren't tuned to like A440. So if you tune your guitar up with like a tuner app or whatever, and then try to like play along with a lot of the stuff, some of the albums is just like, oh wow, I'm just like so in between two keys. You have to tune your guitar to the album. Some people even mentioned this comment in the video I did on the vinyl thing. That blew me away. I'm like, whoa, this is just something that I've never had to deal with. I've always just, you know, put on music and then jammed to my favorite music with it. But having stuff be in between a properly tuned guitar was kind of a trip to kind of play along with. So that was really, really interesting. I think off of Asia, Black Cow is probably my favorite, but Peg is probably the best song, I would say. It's kind of hard to argue with that. And then after that we have Gaucho. Gaucho is another one that kind of, I felt carried on in the tradition of Asia without as many just like straight up banger hits. I think K19 is probably, you know, universally understood to be the best song on there. That and Gaucho, those are actually a lot of fun to jam along with too. So one of my favorite things to do is actually listen to some of this stuff for the first or second time and then try to actually jam along with it. It is so good for your musicianship to try and use your ear to keep up with the changes without actually knowing what the chords are. How do you play that? Oh, key change. So after this, I'm gonna take a second just to acknowledge Nightfly. Okay, this is Fagen's solo album that he did a couple years after Gaucho came out, before they took like a 20-year break, essentially. People love Nightfly. I think this is the song, or this is the album that seems the most dated to me, just because of the presence of so many synthesizers. I feel like 1982 or 1981 and 80 when this was being made, there's a lot of excitement around synths. I have a hard time listening to music from that period just because they take the cheesiest, most dated sounding synthesizers and they just put it all over the album, right? Same with like the latest Led Zeppelin stuff. It just sounds so dated to me personally. It's hard to get over that, even though the chops are all there and it's really well written and stuff. I definitely had a hard time listening to Nightfly, but honorable mention because, you know, it is a pretty important work of his that was the last thing that he/they did up until 20 years later. 20 years later, very interesting, they come back with Two Against Nature, and if nothing ever happened, okay, if it was just the music, which is how it always should be, I'd be like, oh, this is, you know, this is just kind of like a modern take on Steely Dan, maybe a band that had its heyday. Glad they're putting stuff out there, doing stuff, you know, like they've obviously earned the right to do whatever they want to do. But it wasn't until, and I wrote the date down here actually, February 21st, 2001, when the biggest atrocity in the history of music occurred. At the Grammys, Two Against Nature beat out Kid A from Radiohead and Marshall Mathers LP from Eminem for Album of the Year. This is ridiculous. This is the night that the Grammys lost any shred of dignity, authenticity, validity that they ever had remaining. And I feel like they've still not recovered for this. The fact that Two Against Nature won Album of the Year over Kid A Radiohead, blows my mind. It's just, what? I read this and it's what do you mean? And looking at this album through that prism, knowing that it beat out what is objectively an iconic Radiohead album, and if you're, you know, into Eminem stuff too, you can't really deny the cultural impact that that had. And because of these accolades, it unfairly makes me hate Two Against Nature. There's something that is like way too smooth about Two Against. All the stuff people kind of complain about Steely Dan, like it being too smooth, it's like boomer rock, yacht rock, whatever, is kind of true in Two Against Nature. And then the follow-up to that, Everything Must Go. The only thing I compare this to is in like the early 2000s, I remember me and my friends sarcastically attended a Steven Seagal blues music concert. It was this thing where, you know, action star Steven Seagal was really into guitar and he was touring with a blues band. That was a weird day, man. Weird day. It was pretty funny, man. We were so excited to go to that show. We got there super early. We were in the front row. And I remember Seagal was like right there just profusely sweating this far away from me. I'm like, this is fantastic. And there was one where he was trying to get an audience participation thing going on to clap to some like stupid 12-hour blues thing. And he was trying to get the audience to clap. And like, I wasn't gonna start clapping. I was just kind of like, just vibing, whatever. And then Seagal came up and he looked at me, tried to intimidate me to start clapping along to the beat. And in one of my finer moments of machismo, I didn't fold, guys. I said, no, Seagal, I will not clap at your stupid blues band concert. Everything that happened that day reminds me of the last two Steely Dan albums. So it was really hard for me to actually get through those last two. But again, 20 years went by. You can't argue that they were such a great band, that they inspired so many different things that actually led to them coming back after 20 years off and sounding a little bit dated. So I want to talk a little bit about the music, okay? It's hard to actually do this with the guitar. It's kind of difficult to play a lot of Steely Dan songs on guitar, like acoustic guitar or something like that. But I've got two just real quick examples of something that makes them just like, you know, different than the regular pop rock band. The song that I'm probably most familiar with is Dirty Work. And if we start it on like A minor 7, the chord progression is A minor 7, D minor 7, G to C, F, B flat, C, G. Okay, so essentially, in and of itself, that chord progression is almost diatonic, which means everything stays where it should. Musically, there aren't any weird notes or anything like that, with the exception of a B flat. So again, if you were just to play only notes in the key of C, you'd get A minor, D minor 7, G, C major 7, F, B minor 7 flat 5, C, G. So that would be a 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 1, 5. But instead of having that B, it goes B flat. Why is there so much distortion on this? Let me make this cleaner. So basically that B flat as a flat 7 major chord is what's interesting about that. Which, you know, okay, you just have like a passing tone chord. It's not that big a deal, especially when you think of the melody of the song. Basically, the melody is, you know, kind of dancing around stuff in, you know, C major, right? Now, when it goes to the chorus switches to C, F, A minor, B flat. Okay, so now it's like, all right, well, we haven't really changed the chords here. We're still using chords from the verse progression, but the tonal center has changed. And one of the reasons that we kind of think about that is like, all right, it feels like it goes home to C and then A minor, but now the B flat has like a lot more importance, right? And that really makes itself prevalent when you add the vocal melody to it. So you'll notice it ends on the B flat. And that's what's something that I've noticed kind of lends itself to the genius of Donald Fagen as a composer, is when he chooses the harmony for a melody, he's not afraid to break basically all the rules. And it's like, sure, they have like jazz backgrounds and stuff like that, but I think something that he does a lot is he will take the melody, and whereas a lot of composers will have that melody be supported by a chord underneath it, this is a great example of the chord that he chooses, the bass note will actually be the note that he's singing, right? The note that is sung very often in Steely Dan ends up being the root note of the new chord, which is outside of the chord progression sometimes, which kind of really has such a huge effect on the tonal center that makes it seem surprising a lot of times. I would say a lot of composers, like the rule of thumb that they'll tell you is like, put the melody on top of the chord. So like if you have like a C major 7 as like your harmony, it'd be like use a C major 7 as a C, a E, a G, and a B. Maybe sing the B, or sing the third, or something like that. Fagen's like, nope, we're doing it on the root note. And I think that actually is something that I learned with like jamming along to this, which is a great exercise anybody should do, is it's almost kind of like surprising and refreshing because that doesn't usually happen a lot. Another great example is the chord progression from Deacon Blues off of Asia, where it starts off pretty basic, kind of similar to Jojo Koshi. It's like A minor 7 to E minor, minor to C, and then it goes B flat major 7, A minor, then we start the descending line. It's like that's so good. So real quick, this is like if we're thinking of this in the key of C or A minor, which again, so the chords would be A minor 7, E minor, D minor. Right there, right off the bat, that is your clue to what key you're in, because there's only 3 minor chords technically in any key. So if A is a minor chord, E and D and E are right next to each other, so the 2 and 3 chord. Join my Patreon if you want to learn all about music theory. This is in the key of C or A minor. We've got the 6 chord, the 3 chord, then the 2 chord to 1, flat 7 major, back to 6, then walk it down. Which is awesome. Like what a great use of chromatic dissension. What I mean by that is like everything is normal. A minor, E minor, D minor, C. As soon as you get to that B flat, we're outside. What's the note before B flat? A. Then that A starts getting descended. A over G, A over F sharp, A over F, E, back to F, and then A. It's like, it just feels so good. Like, I love playing that. Deacon Blues is such a great song. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the legacy of the band. And doing the research, there's a lot of things that really, really surprised me, and I would love for you guys to comment on this. It said the Doobie Brothers were actually more successful than Steely Dan back in the day. That is hard for me to believe, just because I feel that Steely Dan is so much more culturally significant today than maybe the Doobie Brothers are, or maybe I'm just totally in some kind of echo chamber about this. It doesn't really seem to me like those bands are very close in cultural relevance. That also brings us to the term yacht rock. When I first did the unboxing video for this guitar and talked about kind of like going on this journey, I got so much pushback from even mentioning the term yacht rock. People get so mad about this. Famously even, for the Yacht Rock documentary, which I highly suggest watching, is on HBO Max or whatever to stream it. It's so complimentary of everybody in the band and like everybody that worked on that stuff. There's a part at the end where the guy's going to interview Donald Fagen, and he's like, what is this about? He's like, oh, it's about yacht rock. And he tells him to go F himself. And it's like so awesome. Tip your cap to Donald Fagen for being like that real about that, because that's hilarious to me. The yacht rock thing is interesting because if not for the reemergence of yacht rock, I promise you I wouldn't be doing this video. It's only because I've had some exposure to Steely Dan via the Yacht Rock Sirius channel that I would listen to just, you know, with my friends and stuff, sarcastically, that I eventually grew to love so many of these songs. And there are millions of people that I'm sure have had a similar experience. It's interesting to me that there is such a pushback on people even like classifying it as yacht rock. Like, who cares what you call it? It's just a genre. It's just a stupid genre name. It's just like, I feel like it's all in good fun. People are actively listening and respecting the music. I don't feel like there's really like a huge disrespect there or anything. In fact, in that documentary, I feel like Michael McDonald comes off as kind of like the hero of that, because he just is flattered that people are still listening, and he approaches the whole thing with incredible humility and grace. Same with Christopher Cross. I will say that I personally kind of think the Christopher Cross stuff is like a totally different thing. I think that Steely Dan is eloquent, incredibly arranged, musically literate art, whereas Christopher Cross does kind of seem kind of lame. Again, I haven't given it as much attention as this stuff, but lyrically it's tough. Donald Fagen and Walter Becker's lyrics I think are actually really great. One thing that I appreciate about this band almost more than anything else is these songs aren't love songs. I feel like every artist, like 90% of the catalog is some kind of like lame love song or whatever. Even if they package it in like some cool rock sounding thing, it's all love songs and it just kind of makes me sick at the end of the day. I really appreciate that these are songs about different things. And I do think that that actually, in a weird way, kind of hurts them mainstream wise, because I didn't find myself relating to many Steely Dan songs, with the exception of Dirty Work, just because so much of these songs lyrically are storytelling devices that don't always make a lot of sense. I guess that would be like a mild criticism where it's like, I don't really know when Donald Fagen is joking and being silly versus when he's like maybe trying to actually say something important. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I think these are like incredibly well written, really great lyrical songs. I think Donald Fagen's probably like a genius, to be honest. Like, it's super, super impressive that he was able to kind of do all this the way that he did it. And that's why watching the Peg documentary and the Yacht Rock documentary, it really just paints him, them, all of them in such a positive light that is incredible. And also all the interviews on Rick Beato's channel, like, he always crushes it. So those are really, really exceptional to listen to. Adjacent to the legacy, I do want to say something about how annoying a lot of the superfans are. In the same way that the Yacht Rock stuff gets hated on so much, the first video I did unboxing the guitar, there was a good amount of hate there, where I feel like I came at this pretty open mind, where I'm like, hey, unfamiliar with this music. All of it came out before I was even born, so, you know, I just don't really know it. So many comments were like, you don't know Steely Dan, you call yourself a musician? Obviously you're a hack and you're a loser and you suck. How could you even say, like, the pushback from people who were upset that I didn't have a complete understanding and knowledge of music from a time that I didn't even exist in and have no cultural touchstone with, blows my mind. Because I did the same kind of deep dive video on the Grateful Dead, and the difference between the Grateful Dead community, which was so overwhelmingly positive, inviting, helpful, listen to this, listen to that. The exact opposite with the Steely Dan community. Again, you know, a lot of great comments too. It was kind of wild how salty and disrespected the Steely Dan fan people must feel. So, guys, I'm sorry, but like, I'm doing my best here, all right? In conclusion, I would consider myself a Steely Dan fan now. Hot take, Can't Buy a Thrill is their best album. Asia obviously is a masterpiece, it's a different kind of thing, it plays better as an album. But it still blows my mind how there are like 4 iconic songs on their intro album, having it be their first kind of release into the world. So yeah, it just incredible, incredible stuff. I'm gonna actually perform my second favorite song with my buddy Jack and Lilu to kind of close this video out. It's really been an enlightening thing. I do think that if you're gonna do this, if you don't know anything about Steely Dan, do it in moderation. Because the way that I did it, I burnt myself out like really bad. And by the time I got to Two Against Nature, I was like so done. I'm like, I just can't. I think a lot of it is, it's so musically dense and it requires a couple listens for like a lot of like the chord progressions and stuff to like really sink in, that if you just go just all in, it'll kind of ruin your brain for a little bit and you might become a little bit salty. But I am definitely glad I did it. Thank you again to Sweetwater and Sire Guitars for sponsoring this video. The thing is a beast. This is like a playing machine. And the price is right on this. If you guys really are feeling it, click the affiliate link. Anything you get through Sweetwater, please get it through my affiliate link, because it shows them that you're watching the videos. And I'm also excited to maybe do this with another band. So let me know in the comments what band I should do next. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the song, and thanks for watching. All right, we got the whole band together for some Steely Dan. We got Lou on the other side because we're doing this live.
I know.
And you know, listen, this is how we got to do it in the studio. We got to separate you from the drum kit.
All right, here we go.